If you are a person of color, specifically a black person, that aligns with racist white people, I want to give you some insider information as someone who has a lot of family members from the South specifically, and who has spent a lot of time specifically around rich white people, and who happens not to be racist. So, racist rich white people, like if they talk shit about other minorities and how they, live and act in their culture and this, that, and the other thing, and then they're really nice to you and make you feel like you're accepted, you're different, you're not one of them, they are lying to you. I'm sure other white people can attest to this. When you leave, they mock the fact that you think you are like them. Now, obviously, this is not all white people. It's also not all rich white people. But if you are hanging out with a white person and you think that you're different or special when they're racist towards everyone else, absolutely not. They will mock the fact that you think you're like them, and they oftentimes like you less than the average Joe because they think like, who do you think you are? Like they perceive it as like you're trying to put yourself on the same social status as them. And because they're extremely racist, there is nothing you could ever do or say or any way you could act or dress that would change the way they think. I'm sure other white people can attest to the fact that they think everyone thinks like them, so they'll just like say shit like it's normal to other white people thinking they agree with them. It's really weird. It's especially bad in the South. It's especially bad against wealthier white people. Usually the more like those in the lower class of society will just be more overtly racist. Nope, these ones will smile in your face, they'll start a business with you, your kids will hang out together, and the whole time they will be fucking pissed at your existence. But they find you useful. Because then they can maintain some kind of social status and signal like, oh, I'm not racist. I've seen, several black creators talking about the Nolan Wells case and like the people he was around. You need to listen to them. They are correct.
I have to be honest about this one. This is one of those conversations people are scared to have because everybody's afraid of getting canceled. Me, I'm not, so let's talk about it. So we have this young lady, basically saying that racist white people, they mock black people, and lie when they feel like, oh, you're trying to act white. They just play with it, right? They don't really tell you the truth. Now, let's get into it. I'm really don't have, any issue with how a person feel, but I want to get into the part where she said that a lot of them act fake. Now, I don't have any issue with you being this way or that way, right? I actually have respect for people who are honest. If you're racist, then you're racist, Just don't smile in my face and trash me the second that I leave the room. Tell me to my face. At least I know what I'm dealing with if you're racist, and I know you're racist. If you're racist, you're wrong. Let's get that out the way first. Racism is evil. It's sinful. It's against God because every human being is made in the image of God, right? But I'd rather know you're racist than spend 10, 15, 20 years calling you my friend, homie, or whatever while you're secretly praying for my downfall. Fake people make me nervous more than honest people, even if you're being honest about being racist. I'm just saying the truth, because I know how to deal with honesty, real honesty. I don't know how to deal with deception. See, in the Bible, in Proverbs 27, 5-6, it says, better is open to rebuke than to hide it in love. In other words, stop trusting everybody who's smiling at you. Everybody hugging you isn't for you, period. Everybody saying, love you, bro, doesn't actually love you. Some people clap for you in public and criticize you in private. Those people are very dangerous. Now, let's get to the part nobody wants to talk about. She starts talking about black people who intentionally try to act white, right? Listen, whether that bothers somebody or not, honestly, it doesn't bother me. But here's what I will say about that. I know plenty of black people who get irritated when somebody from another race tries way too hard to act black. We've all seen it. Somebody changes the way they talk overnight. Hey, what up, homie? Not even black, starts forcing slang that doesn't even sound natural, starts acting, like a character instead of just being themselves. We see it all the time, and everybody sitting there start to think, who are you performing for, bro? That's the problem. Too many people today are performing. Everybody wants so hard to fit into somebody else's culture instead of becoming comfortable in the one God gave them. Just being truthful. And here's where, I'm probably going to lose some people right here. Stop trying to act like a race. Black isn't a personality. White isn't a personality. Hispanic isn't a personality. Asian isn't a personality. Your race is not your identity. Your identity is who God created you to be. That's why I laugh when people, say somebody acts white. What does that even mean? Somebody acts white, speaking proper English, going to school, reading books, having good manners. Since when did character become attached to skin? I don't get that. That's one of the dumbest lies we've ever accepted. Excellence doesn't have a race next to it. Intelligence doesn't have a race next to it. Respect doesn't have a race. Success doesn't have a race, man. Stop putting God-given qualities inside racial boxes. That's foolishness. And on the other side, stop trying so hard to prove you're black enough, white enough, whatever you want to call it. If you got to perform your blackness, whiteness, whatever every day, maybe you're performing because you don't know who you are. I don't wake up trying to be black. I wake up trying to be Paul P., a man of God, a businessman, a filmmaker, a future husband, a future father. That's who I am. My skin color is something God gave me. My identity is something I choose every single day. And I think that's where we've missed it as a society. Everybody's obsessed with race, but very few people are obsessed with character. We know your ethnicity, man, but who are you? We know your politics, but who are you? We know what neighborhood you from. I'm from this neighborhood, but who are you? We know what culture you claim, but who are you? Because if I take away your skin color, your clothes, your slang, and your social media, do you even know yourself? That's the real crisis. See, social media has people chasing identities instead of discovering purpose. Everybody out here wants to fit in somewhere. God never called you to fit in. He called you to stand out. In Romans 12:2, it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice. God didn't say become more like the culture. He said become more like Christ. That's where your identity comes from. Christ. Not your race. Christ. Not your neighborhood. Christ. Not your political party. Christ. And here's my challenge to everybody watching this right now. Stop spending your life trying to convince strangers that you're black enough, white enough, rich enough, hood enough, educated, enough, or accepted enough. You don't need permission to be who God created you to be, man. Walk into every room as yourself. That's confidence. That's freedom. That's maturity. Because the strongest people I've ever met weren't trying to imitate anybody. They were comfortable in their own skin because they knew exactly who they were. So yes, racism is definitely wrong. It'll always be wrong, but pretending to be somebody you're not is wrong too. Stop chasing acceptance from people who didn't create you. Chase the approval of the God who did. Because once you know who you are in Christ, you stop performing for everybody else. You don't have to act black. You don't have to act white. You don't have to act like anybody. You simply become who God called you to be. And that's a freedom no racist, no critic, and no opinion can ever take away from you. And I'm going to leave it there. It's your boy, Paul P. God bless you. And I'll catch you on the next one. Deuces.